Hi, thank you all for joining this webinar today on market research as key driver of pharma commercial and predictive analytics. I am Tahira. I will be the moderator and speaker for today's session. Please feel free to post your questions on the chat box. At the end of the session, we'll be able to take your questions and address them. A small brief introduction about the speakers today. I am Tahira. I'm a practice lead in market intelligence with about 14 plus years of experience in pharma healthcare service industry. Also had some 11 years of experience in the pharma industry. My key areas of expertise are KOL management, conference coverage, drive strategic innovations for market research solutions. I have my colleagues, Dr. Pramod and Srinath today as a speaker panel. Dr. Pramod has a practicing experience of about 18 years and comes with rich experience of 11 years in pharma service industry. His experience and service lines are competitive intelligence, clinical trial analytics, and sales analytics. He is a part of various global client engagements and also has an experience working onshore with European clients. Srinath has over about 9 years of experience in pharmaceutical analytics and consulting focused on market research. His depth of expertise lies in epidemiology, market access. He is working closely with clients as partner across geographies. Also has experience being on-site as an engagement manager for a few of pharma clients. I welcome you all for the session today. Today we'll take you through the journey of market research as an overview, how it is a fundamental component of analytics workflow, enables precision decisions in the business, in pharma business. How commercial analytics can be contextualized, patterns and trends can be established to answer the key business questions. Also, we will look into how it drives competitor strategies by virtue of given longer span of drug development, innovations in the market, and how we adopt for the changing situations and how the customers can be influenced. So, the inception of a drug commercialization begins with market research. There is a large volume of scientific and commercial information available through various sources, secondary research or primary research, or could be any syndicated database. It's by and large, it is a lot of unstructured data. This needs to be synthesized and churned into meaningful outcome for driving strides in pharma, which could be launch or segmentation, patient analytics, forecasting, or economic modeling. Innovation is key to pharma industry. How? We need to understand the trends and shifts in the market to be competitive in the pharma market space. So present day, it's extremely important to understand how are the new segments shaping up. To take an example, pharma companies are looking into certain niche segments. Say, for example, opportunities in factor 10A inhibitors, where the current penetration rate is only 3%. Thus, there's a huge opportunity. Where do we get this information about the opportunity? It's basically the pharma market research that drives it. On the other hand, there are certain examples like the mature market, taking pain as an example. Pain market is very fragmented, large, multi-class drugs available here. However, the pharma giants like Pfizer or Teva are looking into late-stage drugs like tanezumab and fasinumab. What is that driving them? Why are they venturing into a mature market? So the approach is different. The way they look at target product profile with the specificity is what drives them. So tanezumab has the first mover advantage in this segment, specifically focused on the osteoarthritis and chronic low back pain. Thus, it's multifaceted. The market research is multifaceted. It brings diversity, it brings knowledge, the current knowledge, and to be able to be in the market space at the speed which is intended the current day. There are other innovations which we can think about are gamification in psychological disorders and gamification in the psychological disorders and so on and so forth. To drive the market research, there are various key considerations. The way we look at two therapy areas could be entirely different. When we look into oncology as a specialty, we have to look into the line of therapy, understand the disease from the survival perspective, whether the survival benefits are in line with the standard of care, biomarker status to be able to have a personalized approach in treatment, and the high costs. The anti-cancer drugs definitely come with the high cost and are inevitable. Thus, the payer and provider research comes into picture. However, in diabetes segments, though the treatment targets of reaching HbA1c is important, but prevention and management of complications, the science on wearables, the nutritional aspects of recommending to the patients, keeping on diet, strategies that reduces the hospital visits are very important. Similarly, the other major considerations could be on the regulatory aspect, where the way we look at the drug and device approval process would definitely impact the launch KPIs. These are different for branded versus generic drugs, biologics and biosimilars, similarly small molecules and biologics. The regulatory policies are quite different between diagnosis and device space. The entire path is different. The market itself is another key consideration where the approach to mature markets and emerging markets are different. Various factors like how a new market entry is planned or an expansion to an existing market is looked into. The loss of patent, biosimilars or biogenerics entries, these are the events that could determine the order of entry and the peak share at launch. So these are the events also predict the success to market, the clinical, the regulatory, or the company potentials. So in a few minutes, my co-speaker will take you through these predictions of the success to market, how it can be looked into. Now, the competition itself is a big science here. For the benchmarking, the competitors help the pharma companies to be at par with and be able to position message in the market. The other areas, the present day, the pharma companies, pharma device, biotech companies are looking into large merger and acquisitions, the licensing opportunities. Here is where the clinical development milestone timelines are reduced, and it comes with a speed to success to market. Here are a few major elements of market research that flow into commercial analytics. Being ready for launch, understanding the opportunity and assessments related to launch KPIs, for being able to forecast the market at its peak and during the launch, mapping the stakeholder for a successful engagement, understanding the patient journey to be able to target, identify the right stakeholders at the right point of time in their flow of patient through the treatment process and through the physician interactions is key. Demographics or the patient and physician switching behaviors form the part of segmenting targeting. And the digitalization is the current norm. The communications through digital channels and the speed with which and the innovation with which a pharma company reaches the HCP or a patient determines the success to the market. So here is very interesting example use case that I can bring it to your attention. About 400 stakeholders within 4 therapy areas in the LATAM regions, a research was performed to understand the digital penetration as basic concept to understand with respect to demographics and with respect to the type of devices that is being used. The objective of the exercise was to understand the digital adoption rates to various countries and also with reference to the HCPs who adopt and prefer the specific channels through various within the therapy areas as well. The specialty that we have used were diverse, and the approach was to do a baseline with the focus group itself, and then provide the inputs for the primary research through benchmarking the competitors. Now, what was the outcome here? The outcome was the change. There are differences between the specialty, be it cardiologists and endocrinologists. While the endocrinologists preferred the live streaming and mobile apps, the cardiologists preferred company websites to communicate. And the pharma companies adopted the company websites and patient HCP educations through the main channels to approach this. So what was the finding here? It could lay a strategic roadmap for digital engagement of the pharma company. However, there are few insights like mobile apps were very few pharma companies adopted mobile apps. So there is an opportunity here. And the telereps and social media platforms were not preferred by HCPs in these regions from these specialty. So definitely there is a large volume of information that flows into commercialization of the drug and throughout its life cycle. So here is where I also asked my colleague Srinath to speak about his expertise into these areas, the commercial analytics.
Sure. Thank you, Tahira, for the wonderful background and setting the context for the application of market research in the benefit of pharma commercials. Now, this is a second use case which I just wanted to discuss. And for all audience who are price sensitive, who feel that they should just be paying the exact price on a particular product or service which needs to be tied to its benefit, and if you feel that you should not be paying an additional dollar, then this use case is going to be really interesting. So I'm going to talk about pharmaco-economic models and how market research presents as a fundamental and critical step in executing a pharmaco-economic evaluation. To start with, before conducting a pharmacoeconomic evaluation, it is highly important to understand the market. Now, what does that mean to understand the market? Let us take an example. Suppose there is a need to perform a cost effectiveness analysis for a drug that is used to lower LDL levels, which in layman terms we call cholesterol levels. Now, if we are to execute this analysis, it will depend on market research to understand who my target audience are. What is the patient segment that I'm targeting? What is the size of the patient segment? What different therapeutic options are available for the treatment? Who would be my comparators? What is the acceptable willingness to pay threshold in these markets, and so on and so forth. Now, these questions needs to be answered even before the planning phase of a appropriate pharmacoeconomic evaluation. And these inputs would ideally be sourced from a market research activity. Now, after this is all answered, at the development phase, we need to estimate the input data fields that would be utilized across pharmacoeconomic models. Why should we do that? Because in a typical pharmacoeconomic modeling, we are looking to answer whether the inclusion of a drug candidate within a formulary actually is cost saving or not. Now, all the inputs that are typically needed in order to run a pharmacoeconomic model has to be sourced via market research. And that is the whole significance of market research in pharma commercials. Now, if this is getting a lot theoretical, let's understand this better by picking an example. Now, moving on to next slide. So here the ask was to build a decision analytical model in order to perform cost effectiveness analysis from a healthcare societal perspective. Now, in a typical CEA, which is a cost effectiveness analysis, the baseline question that needs to be answered is if my intervention is cost effective as compared to the existing standard of care or not. So in this case, the output parameter for a cost effectiveness analysis is called ICER. ICER is means incremental cost effective ratio, which is computed by and large using the cost benefit ratio of treatment A versus treatment B. Now, if we were to do this, there are certain data elements that need to be considered, be it direct cost, which is nothing but the cost of a drug, the cost of its supplies, equipment costs, physician costs, etc. Indirect costs is another input field, which is basically the cost which implies to loss of productivity, which is basically a time taken to return to work or normal activities. Then there are efficacy attributes of a drug. Now, these data inputs are needed from a cost perspective. And if we really look at qualies, then there are certain data elements like utility, which is nothing but a measure of the effect of the drug. What is the probability of death or survival? What is the recurrence rate, and so on. So these are some examples of input data that is required in order to perform a cost effectiveness analysis. Now, by and large, all these input data needs to be sourced via market research. It could be a simple literature survey, or it can also be conducting interviews with KOLs, with HCPs in order to understand these data fields. So that is in a nutshell about pharmacoeconomics. The another use case which I wanted to discuss about is basically forecasting. And when we say forecasting as a service or a practice, it is very, very important for any industry, and pharmaceutical industry is no exception, because forecasting helps us to understand what is the future. Now, assume you are designing a product or a service without knowing the potential user pool. Now, isn't that a huge risk? Hence, forecasting is a fundamental step for any business. And so, pharma commercialization also depends a lot on forecasting. Now, how does market research as an activity enable forecasting? Like any other services, forecasting has evolved from traditional to more advanced, and so does the underlying market research. Earlier, market research was largely retrospective, looking at history and evaluating studies that are done in a control environment. And as the time progressed and as the industry evolved, even market research has evolved to conduct based on uncontrolled environment, that is analysis based out of real world data as inputs, and leveraging artificial intelligence and machine learning techniques, all algorithms that are developed out of it to drive efficiency to overall the market research process. Now let's try to understand forecasting in a better sense by taking an example and how market research acts as a fundamental element. Now let's take this example wherein the objective, there are various objectives here. So first objective was to identify at-risk population for prophylactic care of COVID-19. So the reason we picked COVID-19 here is, I think this is not only an ongoing but also an interesting topic in these days. So let's and the first objective of identifying prophylactic care, the significance of this is basically if a pharmaceutical company is aiming at developing a vaccine, then they need to look at, okay, what are my risk population and how does the risk population grow over time. The second objective was to identify treatable patient population for drug treatment by patient segment. Now, why this is important? Because if a pharmaceutical company is developing a therapeutic candidate which is used for the treatment of patients with COVID-19 infections, it is highly important for them to not only evaluate the existing patient pool that is available for treatment, but also to project it based on certain market aspects. And the third objective is basically to forecast the market size and revenue potential by drug class and segment. Now, in order to address the first objective, basically we looked at various risk population, right? So now when we actually started doing this analysis, there were various inputs. It was not pretty straightforward, right? Because this is an, as you know, this is an evolving topic, and there are certain things which keeps on changing. So it was really difficult for us to nail down, okay, what are the people or the population who are at risk for developing a COVID-19 infection. And through market research, we were really able to kind of prioritize three categories of population who are at highest risk of either being infected themselves or transmitting the infections. So that is what you see on the top right hand corner, the three top priority segments who are at highest risk of getting an infection. So it could be patients and others. So when I mean the patients, these are not essentially COVID-19 patients. These are basically patients with other illnesses who are more prone for a COVID-19 infection. So it could be, say, people who are with comorbidities like hypertension, with metabolic disorders like diabetes, immunocompromised patients, patients with chronic kidney disease, and so on. And others, what we mean is basically age is a factor of infection, so which is directly proportional to infection. So geriatric patients, pregnant women. So these are basically we identified as the at-risk population through market research. And the next segment was basically the healthcare workers, because these patients do come in contact with COVID-19 patients, and sometimes healthcare workers expose themselves even without knowing whether the patient or their caregivers are carrying an infection. So they are again the second set of population who are at risk for infection. And then we also arrived at first time respondents. So if I mean first time respondents, these are basically emergency medical staffs, police personals, and people who are working with the army, and so on. So by the help of market research, we were able to really nail down these three segments who are at risk of developing a COVID-19 infection. And when we moved on to identify treatable patient population, so basically like any other epidemic analysis, we looked at what would be the incidence, what would be the diagnosed COVID cases, and when we really came to the treated patients, there were three different segments that we had to nail down: asymptomatic to mild, moderate to severe, which are basically patients with pneumonia, and the critical who have acute respiratory distress syndromes. So in order to arrive at all these, market research was such a fundamental element. So we had to do literature reviews in order to identify these data points. Sometimes KOL interviews, as this is an evolving topic, we had to reach out to KOLs in order to get data inputs. And when we moved from here to kind of really arriving at the typical patient numbers, units, or revenues, which would be the actual endpoints from a forecasting. So we had to depend on market research to provide us several data points, and we call it in forecasting language as assumptions. So these assumptions could be, okay, if I were to launch my product early to 2021, so what would be the potential patient size, what would be the market scenario, how many competitors would have already entered or kind of going to enter along with me. So these are typically certain factors that need to be answered through a market research in order to successfully run a forecast exercise. So this is in a nutshell uh, how market research acts as a key driver of pharma commercial. So with this, I think we will move on to the next topic, that is basically how what is the significance of predictive analytics, because that is kind of gaining a lot of traction these days. And I have my colleague Dr. Pramod, who will talk about the significance of predictive analytics and the role of market research in successfully executing a predictive analytics.
Yeah. Thanks, Srinath. Thanks for that wonderful presentation on how we can leverage market research and forecasting and commercial analytics. So, hi everyone. Today, I'm planning to just throw some light on not exactly predictive analytics per se, but how can we leverage market research in predictive analytics. As we all know, what is predictive analytics? Mainly trying to visualize the future based on some buildup of predictive models, which would be again based on our understanding of the current data, the current market, and to some extent historical data as well. As you see, so market research invariably depends on various attributes across different research areas. Here you can see a big laundry list of various attributes that we analyze using market research in order to arrive at very specific attributes or the factors which aid in as an input for our predictive models. And these predictive model would support us or help us in providing a suitable output as per the business needs. So like for example, so we would be able to predict probability of success, predict the clinical timeline, then likelihood of partnership for any company, and so on. I would just go by each of these in the following slides and try to see what are the specific attributes that would be required for each of these predictive analytics output to be achieved. Yeah. So probability of success. Yeah. So what do we mean by probability of success? Basically, most of the pharma companies would be interested to know as to see what is the favorable environment for any successful launch or successful approval. So they would definitely want to identify the drivers which has a kind of a positive impact on the successful approval. So that actually in a nutshell defines the probability of success for any molecule or any pharma company. So what are the various attributes that we look at from the market research perspective when we need to develop a predictive model for arriving or achieving probability of success? So as we look at it, there are various categories or attributes that we need to analyze from the current situation or current scenario as well as the historical situation, like what are the regulatory designations, whether they have any impact on the approval, the successful approval, the partnership and collaboration, then clinical profile per se, that is your safety and efficacy. So these are some of the attributes that we need to analyze and feed into the model, and that predictive model would actually arrive at the probability of success. So the next is very important from the pharma company's perspective. So they would always want to know who's entering the market at what time. So obviously they would want to know their competitors and as well as their own product to see when these products are entering the market and trying to crowd the particular therapy area or indication. So what are the attributes from market research that we need to analyze in order to come up with this model where it can actually estimate a timeline? So basically we are looking at more from a clinical perspective here. So we are trying to see what is the developmental milestone or the developmental journey of any previous molecule, the historical evidences for that, then trying to see what are the regulatory hindrances or regulatory designation. Is it something which is impacting like orphan drug disease or a breakthrough therapy or a priority review? Would that also aid in timeline, expedite the timeline for clinical trial as well as the approval? So these are some of the on the left hand side you can see these are the attributes which actually needs to be analyzed again, then need to be put as an input to the data into the model to estimate that overall timeline. Yeah, likelihood of partnership. So as we all know, most of the pharma companies depend on various collaborations with other pharma companies or the financial institutions at various stages of life cycle management of a drug. So it can be at a development stage and also for the commercialization of a product. So what is the need here? Any pharma companies wants to understand who can be a very good partner for me, or what is the likelihood of any specific company or a type of company to become a partner. So predicting that likelihood of partnership itself will give them a value add to understand, okay, when and how or which other companies I can actually partner with. So in order to arrive at this, there again we are looking at from the market research perspective, we are looking at the current partnership, the historical partnership, and also trying to map that partnership to any specific indication. Is there a partnership need happening very much, or it's high with some indications, or it's very high with a certain type of molecules? Is it biologics or a certain type of companies like which has a very high sales force or a high revenue? Is it the mid cap companies or the low cap company which is going for partnership? These are some of the attributes we want to analyze in order to arrive at a kind of a predictive model which can actually define what is the likelihood for any company to come for a partnership or to go for a partnership. And now one of the most important aspect, of course, most of the pharma companies cannot live without this. That is your promotion of their product, because product promotion is key to their revenue generation. So it invariably means that there has to be a kind of a predictive model which can actually define or which can predict the likelihood of successful campaign. So I want to do a campaign to promote my product, but I'm not sure how successful it will be. So how, in the sense, we are trying to see what market this will be successful. I want to predict as to see what is that barrier which might actually go against successful campaign. In order to do that, obviously my groundwork or the homework from market research perspective would be to understand what is the unmet need in a particular market where they're going for a campaign or they're promoting the drug. What is the strength, weakness, threat and opportunity in that specific indication or therapy area, and based on the company's strength per se and promotional spend, so we can actually predict the likelihood of successful campaign for any pharma company. So I'm not going into the predictive analysis part of it, but from the market research perspective, these are the basic homework or the basic understanding of our current market is definitely required in order to predict the successful campaign likelihood. So the last but not the least, of course, now we're in the era of automation. Obviously, the NLP model, predictive model, is the talk of the talk. So where market research comes very handy is for any predictive model or NLP model to work, it requires extensive training. So for training the model, there is which is definitely a human intensive. So it requires a lot of manual effort, and that manual effort comes with a background of knowledge on the market that they are actually working on. So here, with an understanding of market research, you train a model. So you understand the treatment algorithm, you understand the target segment, then you understand the patient perception or regulatory designation. So based on these, you try to train a particular model, and those training module can be used to train this NLP model in order to do a predictive analysis. I'll come to a definitive illustration of a use case for this as well in the upcoming slides. So with this quick background on what is required and what is the homework that needs to be done from market research perspective. So I would like to take you to an interesting use case here, wherein we have wherein the major objective is to identify the drivers, as I said mentioned earlier. So how these drivers could impact the successful product approval or the launch. So basically we are trying to answer who, where, when, and how of this particular objective. Basically trying to say who is in favorable position to enter the market, where or which market or which geography is more favorable to enter, when, what is the time, the appropriate time or the right time, or how long it might take for a particular set of molecules in a therapy area to enter, and if at all they're entering, how would they enter. So what are the barriers or what are the drivers that actually impact positively as well as negatively for an approval or for a successful approval of a product. So basically we are looking at a couple of objectives here, and our first approach, as I mentioned earlier, is to identify the attributes which might have a kind of an impact on the successful product approval. So that attribute can come from various research areas like clinical measures, like the phase of the development, the clinical profile of a drug. In terms of regulatory, it can be a regulatory history, the regulatory designations like orphan drug designations, or it can be breakthrough therapy. Then patient stratification, how many numbers of patients enrolled, then the demographics of the patients, then what are the different measures, outcome measures used for that particular clinical trial. So, and also in terms of company, also there are various important factors which would actually give a overall strength of the company or a capability of the company to expedite the process. And if that, we can always investigate whether that potential has any effect on the approval, successful approval of the launch of the product. So using these attributes, this was done mainly for the biologics. So using these attributes, we are trying to convert the qualitative data to quantitative data using some ranking or weighted scoring methodology to come up with the final scores which can go into the model as an input. This model can act as a predictive model in predicting the following the business outcomes like probability of success, the market specific drivers, as well as when I say driver, it also includes the barriers. So what is going to pull down, or what is going to act or basically impact negatively on the approval, and then the launch timeline. All this prediction basically comes from this model. As of now, what we have experienced is sometimes this model, after repetitive iteration and tweaking, would definitely give up to an accuracy of 80%. So what is the outcome? So I'm just giving you a snapshot of outcome on the right hand side, where I'm trying to see if I had to enlist the top impacting factors for an approval. So it would be like orphan drug designation, definitely, which is going to have a huge impact positively on the approval, and following breakthrough therapy, then the QOL, quality of life studies, apart from just the comparative or the pivotal studies. QOL definitely has a higher chance of getting the products approved. And also the company strength in terms of the company's experience in the previous therapy area or in the same indication, or the number of assets would also interestingly show as a very high impacting factor for successful product approval. So this is in continuation with the same use case here, where we are showing overall visual graphical representation of various factors in the market, which through the predictive model has arrived at the top high impact as well as the bottom low impact factors. In this process, we could also identify not only factors which are affecting positively for a drug approval, as well as there are negative factors also, as you see here in the biologics therapy, biologics area, oncology and the location outside US are acting as a negative impact model. So basically it is acting negatively on the successful approval of a drug. So the next is another use case, as I earlier mentioned, regarding the development of NLP model. So this use case, mainly the objective of this was to understand the physician as well as patient perception for a particular market, for the top market leaders in dry eye disease. So we have taken two different products, the market leader and that's so the competitors, two competitors from dry eye disease, to understand what is the perception both from physician and patients end, that we can actually analyze the overall satisfaction or the brand satisfaction as well as sentiments for that particular brand. So here the data was used was social media data to understand to source the data from basically from the social media conversation. So but where is the market research coming up? For any NLP model to be developed, basically the prerequisite is to train the model, as I earlier said. And why is NLP model here required? Because sometimes the social media data is very manual intensive or human intensive work, which may not be able to do it manually, because somewhere we'll have to look at the scalability. So in order to do that, we'll have to build in some automation model using machine learning algorithms. So in order to develop that model, we need to train that model with some training set or training module. So where market research comes very handy is to, in order to train that model, we need to convert the data in a readable format. So how do we convert the data in a readable format, or where it can be interpreted to the business need, is with the fair knowledge from the market research in terms of what is the product, what is the target population, what is the indication, what are the challenges, limitations, as well as how is the patient perception and the clinical profile of these products. So once you have that understanding, then it's easy for you to actually convert this data in more readable form or more interpretable form, which can then be used to train the model. Here, with that market research knowledge, what we developed was we could identify the top target categories which most of the market around dry eye disease was throwing through social media. So that was cost, efficacy, safety, compliance, and comfort. So having these 5 categories identified, now we manually map the data under these 5 categories in addition to the sentiments through the post, how these perception of the physician or the patient perception is coming out in terms of sentiments, whether it's quite positive or negative. So this data was then used as a training module to train the NLP, which in fact, after again several reiterations and tweaking, could actually predict the type of post for the rest of the data with almost 80 to 85% accuracy. And also it could actually categorize the key messages based on these 5 categories. As well. Then this of data-driven insights could be derived through this NLP model, and wherein the sentiment analysis could throw some light on what is the satisfaction, the brand level satisfaction from both a physician as well as patient perspective. So in a nutshell, as we see, the importance the market research brings, it's quite vital to this predictive analysis in developing a predictive model, especially that will not only critical, but also it's a primary requisite for any predictive model development exercise. So with this, we have almost come to the end of this session. I would hand over to Tahira to just give you a quick conclusion to this, and also summarize the key takeaways from these sessions.
Thank you, Pramod. So thank you all for your patient listening. So in order to summarize, so we have been seeing that market research is very crucial for starting from the understanding the disease domain at various stages of product life cycle in terms of commercialization, or understanding the differences between the drug device space. So the examples that my co-speakers presented today, I think, is wide and depth enough to present you the depth and importance of market research here. So without market research, the commercialization of drug or the competitive landscape being updated in the market, driving innovations, or benchmarking the competitors' predictions, how to be competent enough in the market is not possible. So definitely understanding the decision pharma domain are crucial. So market research provides a competitive advantage and drives informed decisions. It helps connecting the analytics to market trends and shifts. And it also provides us warning signs for predictions, be it positive or be it barrier, as my speakers exemplified. So thank you all for being with us today. Now we are open to take any questions that you may have. Please feel free to share your questions. We'll be able to answer those in the next few minutes.
Yes, Tahira. In fact, we have received a couple of questions, and as Tahira mentioned, we will urge you to type in the questions and share with us. So meanwhile, I think we'll try to answer those questions in the next few minutes. So there are a couple of questions, so I'll kind of take a stab at answering them, and also would invite the other panelists to also share their views. So the first question goes, so are there any tools that you are leveraging in executing a market research activity? If yes, which are those? So typically, I think we use a lot of tools and technologies in order to make the market research process as efficient as possible. So to give some examples, I think we have an inbuilt tool which is called iNews, which is basically a new news monitoring platform which screens, which tracks and kind of creates a synopsis with insights for news item, which helps pharma companies in kind of alerting them about what is really going on in the market situation, be it alongside regulators, be it what is really happening across their competitors, and so on. And like that, we also have built internally a KOL portal, and we are leveraging certain platforms for, say, social media monitoring and listening, conducting primary market research, and wherever there is opportunities to kind of strengthen the process, and wherever we feel certain processes are kind of repetitive, then we bring in automation through kind of developing certain tools and certain codings. So that is in a nutshell the tools that we leverage. Over to other panelists to add.
Yeah, thank you, Srinath. So a few more tools that we adopt are analog repository tools, where we do not have enough data to address understand the market access, or be able to do any forecast. We will leverage our analog repository tool. And for primary research, we have partnership with Qualtrics. We take this along them for field surveys as well as for analysis and visualizations. And as Srinath mentioned, we have wherever it's repetitive in order to drive efficiencies, we have our own in-house tools that support us in laying the market research principles.
Thanks, Taira. The second question, sorry, Pramod, do you want to add any?
No, I think both of you have covered most of the things. I don't think I have.
Sure. I think the second question, I think Pramod, it's for you. So what is the collaboration model between analytics and CI team members on these projects? So to again take a first stab at it, I think this basically, I mean, we have we work collectively and it happens across different phases, right? So uh, uh, even before a project gets initiated, I think there are certain questions that need to be answered with respect to understanding the market. So if I take an example, I think if there are there should be a campaign analytics that needs to be conducted. So kind of in even before kind of planning the campaign strategies, I think market research becomes a fundamental element to kind of provide information like who are my target audience and what are their preferences, are they technical, I mean digitally savvy or not. I mean, so these are basically some of the inputs that from a market research we try to help and collaboratively work with the analytics team. Anything to be added?
Yeah.
So regarding the collaboration, yes, it starts with from the point of taking the exact requirement from the client. So where we, after taking the exact requirement, we collaborate internally with the analytics team and brainstorm to come up with the exact methodology, and also try to see what is that the model is that they're going to develop for this particular exercise, and for which what is the prerequisite from the market research. So to that extent the collaboration happens, and it's a day in day out a collaboration on a continuous basis till the end results are achieved. So there is I mean both the teams, there's no question of working in silos at all for this, either at the starting of the project as well as when only the modeling part comes. Even then there is a market research team which is always guiding to interpret the data even while inputting that to the model. To that extent the collaboration happens at our place, at our organization.
Yeah, I think forecasting is one example wherein the events or the epidemiology data for determining the market size and forecasting, that's where the collaboration happens between the market research team and the analytics. It goes hand in hand. Both the research and analytics go hand in hand. And there are other examples. We had a scenario wherein a pharma company was looking at increasing their market share and wanted a campaign to be done, increase the campaign. However, our campaign team and the forecasting team wanted to know where is the real opportunity here. For 6 brands, 6 in line brands, we identified certain segments of the patient segments, the geographical segments, the nuances, the seasonal nuances. All that went as giving them the total opportunity that definitely there is a clear differentiation between their current market share from X number to Y number. They could shift on various data points, and that was leveraged to create a playbook and take it forward for increasing the market share.
Sure. Thank you, Tahira and Pramod. I'm just waiting for a third question, so maybe we take another couple of minutes and to wait and see if there are any further questions. So I got a third question. So do Indegene have an in-house NLP pipeline or paid wrappers APIs are used?
Yeah, I mean, I believe that question is for me, but since I'm basically not from predictive analytics expertise or not from the directly from the team, I don't think I'll be able to answer at this point. But definitely, if I can always get back to the analytics and then get back to you in terms of the NLP related pipeline and model.
So
Sure, thanks, Pramod.
though the answer is not direct from me, but yes, we have our CTO office, technology office that drives automations and AI ML practices along with the NLP. I believe we can pass on this question to them and get the answer if you can share your contact details, and then we could answer your question through that. I'm sure we have the answer is yes and positive, but the way we have to consolidate the reply is will be through our technology office.
Thank you, Tahira. I mean, there isn't any fourth question, so I think yeah, I think we can move forward, Tahira.
Yeah, sure. I hope the attendees had good insights into the depth of market research, and I thank you very much for my co-speakers and colleagues, Srinath and Dr. Pramod, for coordinating and presenting it very well today. And I also appreciate and thank you, the organizer, Manjunath, on today. And I also take this opportunity to thank the creative team and the support team who helped us present this webinar and make it successful. Thank you very much and have a good weekend. Take care. Stay safe.